So Facebook, or at least the company's initial public offering, seems to be making more enemies than friends still. It's trading today about $32, down from the offering price of $38, and all kinds of revelations about underwriters changing their estimates of revenue at the last minute, investors being confused, and that's aside from the technical glitches when the company first traded. Rob, you've got a take on how some of this may have come
Well,
about.
I mean, is it really that surprising? We've been arguing for quite some time. This is a company whose CEO and founder really doesn't care about public shareholders. He's made that clear from the get-go. It's codified in their governance. He completely evinced any responsibility for this.
And he didn't need the money.
Didn't need the money. So this whole process was run by his underlings without any clear direction, it seems, including the CFO. You've got VCs who are just happy to cash out as much as they could, to the tune of what, $11+ billion at the highest price possible, and the bankers. So it's not a surprise that this is a poster child for a failed IPO.
Right, and then of course we've got the NASDAQ thing, which just made it even worse. But I mean, is this something that lasts? I mean, is Zuckerberg going to keep out of the way, and is that a bad thing? Does the share price come back? Do people forget what
probably will keep out of the way just because that's his nature. The problem is that Facebook is a very it's a consumer company.
Right.
You know, everyone, you have to interact with it day by day if you're a user.
A lot of the shareholders are probably users, right?
Yeah, and some of them. But the point is that there have been a series of negative stories in the press. You know, I get a call from my mom who's like, you know, doesn't know anything about business or anything,
So
but she's like, what is this Facebook thing?
It's no longer just like this great tool to connect people. It's yet another Wall Street money-grubbing institution.
Right.
And that is a terrible place for this company to be. And, you know, as the first test of Mark Zuckerberg as a public company CEO, you have to call this a failure. I mean, the very act of trying to, you know, back away and say, you know, all those distractions of a public company have now led us to him having these distractions.
The problem, yeah, it is a public company. You can't avoid it. I mean, if you look at, say, Microsoft, what they did on their IPO, it was very, very different. Bill Gates made a point of going in there and saying to the bankers, no, that's too much. We're going to go at a lower price. And he insisted on going
in order to give investors
in order to give something to them, and also just not to get a huge hype and then a blow up and then having this perception that this company had
But here's the point.
misstepped.
He was involved in the process. He inserted himself in there because it's his company, and he said to the underwriters, no, that's too greedy, let's get it down. Where was Mark Zuckerberg in all this? I mean, this is a guy who's known for a Steve Jobsian type approach.
Well, he was getting married the next day.
He got married on Saturday, so he clearly wasn't fully. This is what you get when the CEO basically says, I don't give a damn. And that's what you get, is a process in a vacuum where all sorts of mistakes can happen.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We'll be following this. I'm sure there's many more details to come out on this IPO process, and we'll have more from Breakingviews tomorrow.